Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast. It's CFML News Edition. It's December 20th, 2022, and episode 176. So thanks a lot for joining me, Brad.
It is good to be here, Gavin.
Yep. No Christmas hats for us this week, but don't worry, we got plenty of cheer.
Isn't there like a Zoom filter we can add just to give us Christmas hats?
We probably could, yeah, but it's okay. We'll get through it. Well, let's start by thanking our sponsors, Ortus Solutions, the makers of ColdBox, CommandBox, ForgeBox, TestBox, and all the other boxes out there. You want to tell us how they can say thanks back to Ortus?
I would, but I still don't have the show notes open. Google Drive wants me to verify my blood type and my firstborn and give it a left arm before it'll let me open the doc.
Yeah, it seems to reset every Tuesday morning for me as well. So, but you can.
Oh, here we go. I got it open. So you can like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube, Gavin. Also, you can help Ortus reach for the stars by starring and forking our repositories. You can star all of our GitHub box dependencies from CommandBox directly with our CommandBox GitHub module. It'll search through your box.json dependencies and star them automatically. Save the trouble. Also, subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast apps and leave us a review. And then, of course, you can sign up for your paid account on CFCasts, which is releasing new content every week.
And we got a lot of content this week, too, we'll tell you about soon. But we can also support us by going to the Box store, which is the Box Life store on ortussolutions.com/about-/shop. And there's a couple of Ortus books. So we always talk about the 102 ColdBox HMVC quick tips and tricks on Gumroad, which apparently they got some pricing changes, which is pretty interesting. But also the Learn CFML or Learn Modern ColdFusion or CFML in 100 plus minutes, which is free online.
Ooh, or you now can, it's 100 plus minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, it used to just be 100 minutes, but now it's 100 plus. Wow.
Yep, because we've added some more content. So that is free online at modern-CFML. ortusbooks.com, or you can go and actually get a paid version or a paper version if you prefer as well. So there's a couple of different things or different ways you can say thanks back to Ortus Solutions. Some free, some paid, but they all help and they all thank Ortus. So we have our substantial Patreon supporters, and you want to tell us a little bit more about them and what they're doing to help us?
They're substantial.
Yeah,
I like that.
Trying to come up with Nucleosaurus meetings. It's an Eric thing that we're trying to keep going. He's not here.
Oh, yes. So talking about our goals here.
Yep.
Our current goal number one, we have 43 patrons who are providing 100% of the funding for our Modernize or Die podcast via our Patreon site. That's patreon.com/ortussolutions. And our second goal is we're 39% of the way to fully funding the hosting of ForgeBox.io, which we provide free, including binary storage and S3 for you.
Yep, and speaking of Patreons, we have a Patreon sponsor job announcement from Tomorrow's Guides. So they're a fast-paced leader in the UK care sector, catering for care seekers across 3 areas: care homes, nurseries, and home care. And they've got a couple of roles, which we'll tell you in more detail, but Brad's going to give you a quick overview right now.
I am, a senior CF developer, which is UK only. It is a remote position, permanent, and around 60,000 pounds. And then they have an automation test engineer position, also UK only and remote and permanent, and it is around 40,000 pounds for the salary.
Yep. Cool. So before we get into the news and announcements, just wanted to congratulate David for living in the most soccer champion country of the world. It says they're still celebrating. It's a national holiday today, and just to welcome the team home. So pretty cool for anyone watching or didn't watch. Apparently, it was actually like an interesting soccer match. So the World Cup's always a little more interesting, but it was a bit of a nail biter. So if you guys didn't see it, it might be a soccer game worth watching. And of course, you know who wins, but it's not an easy one. Okay, let's get into the news and announcements. So first up, apparently there's some real ColdFusion in the news. So apparently the U.S. Department of Energy said I think it was last week, that they're going to announce a major scientific breakthrough sometime this week. And I've heard all this little tweets about it, but apparently someone has actually achieved real ColdFusion, and not the language, but the energy. So apparently they put so much energy in, they got 120% out. But there are a lot of people tweeting about it, some people hinting about it, but nothing actually officially announced. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that real ColdFusion.
I'll believe it when I see it, but
yeah,
sounds interesting.
Yeah, so we always get those ColdFusion blasts. Usually people saying it's not real, never did exist, and everyone's like, it's not dead. But anyway, I thought we'd just have a bit of a laugh there. Well, no, it says just fusion, not ColdFusion. Well, yeah. Anyway, they're still mentioning it as ColdFusion because that's the way they always refer to it. So if you look on Twitter under ColdFusion, you see way more tweets about that than anything else this week. So yeah. And the business
I did see a lot of the tweets on my ColdFusion Twitter search. Yeah. I mean, I always see a lot of hashtag free energy conspiracy theory nonsense, but I saw a ton of it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So if you're semi-interested, I'm posting the link, but it's okay if you want to skip over that one. But we did actually have some ColdFusion language news as well. You want to tell us about their little page on the Adobe website, and I'll share my screen for those who are watching.
We're talking about the Meet ColdFusion on Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, they actually got some marketing on their website, which isn't hidden in a dark, deep corner of the web. So they actually have like a real page, accelerating development in the cloud. It was actually nice to see something a little more marketing. If you search for stuff, you might actually find ColdFusion, AWS, but it talks about, some good marketing points. So I just thought that's actually a positive for Adobe, so good job on that. They, talk about their different offerings and everything, and it was kind of nice to see something on their website, which is, pretty strong showing for ColdFusion for once. So I know that's something that they get a lot of grief for, so I thought it'd be nice to mention that, hey, they actually have some good stuff on there, decent marketing page that isn't just product listings and, download links and stuff like that. So, anyways. Well, for those of you who didn't notice, there's been a few blogs released lately on the Ortus blog, and we're into the Box 2022 video release in progress. And so right now we have 9 days, is it? Yep, 9 days we've released. So the first one was the keynotes and the Lucy videos. And then day 2 we had new modules that were previously unannounced until the conference. Day 3 we had more module related things like what are modules, and that actually had one from Dan Card, which is unpacking the box, which was a pretty cool overview of all the crazy box modules and how they relate to CommandBox or ColdBox or this or that, and that was a really good session. And then we had a lot more on ColdBox, and then CommandBox, and then we had Content Box ones, and then we had some Vue.js Alpine CB Wire stuff. And then we had modern CFML yesterday, which is feature flags and AOP and stuff like that. And then today we have debugging CFML applications. So lots of cool little topics, and they got 2 or 3 or 4, or sometimes even 5 videos being released. And after internal discussion, we decided to make some of them free. So there are a free video basically in each of the days. So that way, every day, everyone gets something for nothing. But if you are a paid subscriber, you get all the other great content available there too. So there are a lot of them. I'll just post a couple real quick in the chat, like the most recent. Actually, the last link is a bad one because I fixed it, so I'll just post yesterday's. But okay, so lots and lots of stuff there. But Brad, you want to tell us what you can tell us about the alpha for ColdFusion Fortuna?
Fortuna? What can I tell you?
That's a good question.
I know that the pre-release is going. I'm in it, and I haven't paid that much attention. It seems like I never seem to get notifications from the pre-release forums. So even sometimes when there's conversation, I don't even realize it's happening. But it is out there. You can sign up for it. As far as I can tell, pretty much anyone and everyone who signs up for the pre-release is in. I think having the alpha be private is more of a formality for whatever reason. You can test it on CommandBox. The instructions are there in the pre-release forum. It's a secret way you can use that. And I know that there's been some a webinar or some kind of stuff. I don't know, maybe you already covered that in the podcast that Mark did, going over some of the new features.
Yeah,
That's,
so
that's
I said there was stuff that I
cool,
couldn't
yeah.
tell him about, but there may be a video
Oh.
included. But yeah, so that is in the forum too. So, there I think you still can sign up for the alpha. I just shared the link in the chat for you guys if you want to join in. But yeah, there's some good stuff going on there. And remember, they're trying to release this. I think they said Q2 or something like that next year. That's their goal anyway. So if you guys are running sites and you need to keep up for it, like maybe there's some some requirements you have to keep up, or if you got software that runs on it, you may want to just start testing with it just to try and make sure that you announce any issues you run into it earlier than later, because they are doing a lot of work on it now and it's harder to change it later. So we will be running all the ColdBox stuff through there too, trying to get everything fixed before they release it, because the last thing we need is a version's come out and everyone says nothing works, and then you got to chase it down. So done that before, right, Brad?
Yeah, and in my first test, the ColdBox MVC framework does appear to work on Fortuna, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. We've had previous pre-releases where it initially worked and then it broke in a later update. So hopefully people will actually run their existing projects on it, so we can find any issues prior to the final release.
For sure. Okay, we have a couple little announcements. We got the Advent of Code, which is going on, and there are a couple of leaderboards if you guys are interested. So there's a CFML Slack leaderboard, and there's a Box Team leaderboard. So if you doing Advent of Code, you can join one of those leaderboards and see how you're doing against everybody else. We also wanted to let you guys know that the CFML blog aggregator, cfblogs.org 2.0 release was released, and that's I think Gregory Alexander from the Galaxy blog is actually leading that one. So share my screen just for you guys to see what it looks like. It's kind of nice. I actually found a couple of blogs that aren't actually discussing ColdFusion anymore, so they're not showing up on the tweets or whatever. But you got some ones from Ben, which we'll talk about. Jim Priest, which is the Crumb, which I had to figure who it was. And then some other ones like an architect's view here, and they're talking about all sorts of different stuff with changing from their editors from Emacs to Atom to Proto-REPL and everything in VS Code, and so but a lot of older stuff, like I said, with the blogs coming out. But there's a podcast too from Working Code, and Russ Michaels talking about some PayPal scams, so be aware. But it's kind of nice to see that. It's pulling in from lots of different places, so it's cool to have it back up and running. It'd be nice to get more blogs active. I got to get mine re-put on back online too. After my domain occurrence, I haven't really done much. Been too busy with order stuff, but maybe I'll get that back and start blogging some stuff, which is useful for everybody. And then there's a couple weeks left for the ColdBox Master Class, right, Brad?
There are. It's free through the end of the year. So that was Ortus' little Christmas gift to everybody, was if you've been wanting to learn ColdBox and didn't have the time or didn't want to pay for the class, we were going to give people free access to it through 2022.
Yep, and I know when Kai was on the show a few weeks back, he said that he's had his whole group do it, and they said it was really good content. And Nolan, if you've ever seen Nolan present, he's a good presenter, and he's actually the one produced most of those videos. So yeah, it definitely gets high regard. And so if you want to look at ColdBox, dive into it. It's a great way to go. Excuse me. Okay, so next up we have new releases and updates. And so if you guys didn't check it out, we had a MasaCMS update last week, so we announced that. There was a vulnerability, so if you are running 7.3, you should update to the 7.3.1 immediately. It can be done through the administrator or via manual update, so I'm going to put both of those links in there in case you guys are running those. But we also had another, in case you missed it, which I think you're probably the right person to talk about this. CommandBox 5.7 was released, right? Tell us what's in there and why we should care.
There's a handful of things in there. It wasn't a massive release, but I'm just pulling up the release notes real quick to make sure I get it all. One of the bigger things is we just updated several libraries, trying to keep up with all the different Java libraries that have security updates. There was no exploitable things that I'm aware of in CommandBox, but just some of the libraries we include, which involves Lucy, also Undertow, had some security updates of their own. So new version of GeoBoss Undertow was updated to Lucy 5.3.10. which had just come out. And then we added a couple little commands, like an artifacts prune command. They'll get rid of old artifacts. Sometimes you wind up with gigs of old artifacts you don't use. So CommandBox tracks how recently you use those now. The upgrade command, in theory, we'll test it the next time I release an update. But the upgrade command should finally be able to do in-place upgrades of CommandBox, which includes updates to the jar files, without forcing you to download a new box.exe yourself and manually do it. So we'll test that on the next update. And then the other cool feature is you can use PFX files for your SSL certs. I've always kind of wanted that. I found a lot of Windows people use those with IIS. A PX file is actually it's actually a store that can have the private keys and the public keys and stuff all in there in one big file. So CommandBox now supports that if you're using SSL, as opposed to having the separate cert files for the public and private key, which is just a bit more of a pain. So that's the release, and like I said, it has a handful of bug fixes you can see there in the release notes.
Yeah,
things that we tightened up. So thanks to all of the community contributions in this release as well.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through it on my screen share to show everybody, and there were quite a lot of bug fixes. So not a big update, but still a pretty substantial one, and cool to see all those updates going into it. And I am eager to see about the upgrade command for sure. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, it's always a little hard to test something like that, and unfortunately, if it does still have any bugs in it, we won't be able to use it until the next time, because you're always one release behind on a command that auto updates. But anyway,
yeah, but I like your approach to it, though.
Time.
So I guess always the thing with file locking and using the jars inside of it. It's a smart idea on how you've approached it. So we'll see how that works. And then we also had the CommandBox Docker 3.6.3 images release, which obviously they usually come out right after you release a major version, or any decent version of CommandBox, any minor version or major version. But they also announced the 3.6.3 CommandBox image, and obviously they did upgrade the binary, but they also talked about the new distro builds for Red Hat, the universal base image. Do you have any more information on this? I don't know a lot about it, but it sounds interesting. Thought maybe you could tell us a little more.
I don't think I do. You're talking about the CommandBox Docker images?
Yeah, the universal base image stuff that Red Hat put out, the UB9.
I'll be honest, I didn't even see that. I saw that John had updated the images primarily for the new CommandBox release, but I have no idea. I'm curious if that was part of some of the government work that John's been working on. We have a lot of government clients at Ortus, and they have to go through just hoops galore for every piece of software they use, which includes CommandBox and Lucy or Adobe ColdFusion. And so Ortus has been a part of getting several different pieces of software sort of officially added to these internal government lists, which can take quite a bit of work to do. But once you get the software on the list, that opens up the door for all sorts of other government agencies to be able to use that. So CommandBox has been on the DADMS list. No clue what that stands for, but it's used by the Department of Defense for different projects. It's been on that list for years, and I know that John Clausen has been working very hard to get our Docker images certified for another software list called Iron Bank or something. I don't know. If you're not government, you don't really care about it, but if you are in government, you've probably heard of it and you've had to deal with it. And so they, are running a whole suite of security scans against everything in the Docker container to show all the vulnerabilities, which is what led to a bunch of updates in Lucy, just old versions of Java libraries that were coming up in these scans. And Lucy 5.3.10 had a ton of those old library updates, which was part of why we updated CommandBox, so John could update the Docker images. And then Lucy 5.4 should have pretty much the rest of those vulnerabilities all taken care of. So all this kind of stuff has been working together, these Lucy releases and CommandBox releases. And John Clausen, who helps us orchestrate our Docker images, has kind of been helping push that, driven by these scans and things they've been doing to get all the stuff approved for government. So it's pretty exciting. And I mean, it's just good. It's good for the product to actually get a fire lit under people's seats to update all these libraries. Because I was very pleased with how quickly Lucy jumped on a bunch of these and already had a bunch of them done, ready for the next release.
We did cover that when they announced the release. You know, that
Yeah,
was a big thing about it. So
John put in a similar ticket for Adobe. I don't know if you can publicly view it or not because they do weird things and they hide tickets. But when they ran the scans on Adobe ColdFusion servers, there was a startling number of also outdated Java libraries as well there. So hopefully, Adobe will be addressing those soon as well, just to keep their stuff current.
I believe Mark confirmed that any security-related ticket gets hidden by default, just in case there's information in there which may be exploitable or whatnot. So it is in the system. Mark did get the report, but yeah, we cannot publicly see them, and that's why. So John did confirm with Mark about that. So.
All right.
So yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to do some reading on universal base images because I was wondering if you knew anything about it. But it seems like a cool idea. But I'm gonna have to learn more because I feel stupid not knowing. But we can't know everything I know. But something for me to read when I'm sitting around the Christmas tree with everybody else playing on their phones. So okay. So next up we have webinars, meetups, and workshops, and we have a couple things in here. So we have been sharing this link for the Ortus calendar. If you add that the Ortus event calendar to your Google Calendar, you better see all the events as they come up, and we try and add more details into the events as we get closer, like who's doing what. But basically, our Ortus Fridays are back in full effect in 2023. Almost messed up typing that date several times. It's going to take me a while, but I'll get there. But so we have the Ortus office hours coming up on January 6th. So that's Daniel Garcia and a couple of Ortusians, and then you can basically show up to the meeting and ask a couple of questions, and they'll try and get to the bottom of it for you. And if they can't answer it, they'll go hunt down the right Ortusian to help figure that out and get that answer for you. We also have the Software Craftsmanship Book Club on January 13th, so the second Friday of the month. So we did Chapter 1 and 2. We're going to jump to Chapter 3, and then depending on how quickly we move, we might go into 4 as well. Just keep moving through that clean code book from Robert Martin or Uncle Bob. And so far, it's been an interesting conversation, and all those videos are up on CFCasts. And then we have the Ortus webinar, January 20th, and then Coding with the Kiwi will be back the fourth Friday, January 27th. So lots of them coming up there. So, pretty cool. And then, did somebody miss something last week, Brad?
I don't know. Did they miss something?
Yeah, there's a Docker Community All Hands, the Winter Edition.
Winter Edition? Sounds cold.
Yep.
I must have missed it because I'll be honest, I didn't even know it was there outside of reading it just now in these show notes. Looks like it was the 7th Community All Hands, a quarterly online event that brings the Docker community together. Wow. Global Meetup featured community news, company product updates, demos, and language-specific sessions. Did you watch it?
I watched a bit of one session, but it's so busy with client work and everything else, and upcoming holidays. So I'm going to go back and try and watch some more of it. So I did share the link in the show notes for anyone who did miss it. But yeah, they have them. It's kind of like a mini DockerCon type setup, just a few sessions. DockerCon's a huge event, but it's kind of cool that they do that and get more of the community members involved, and it sounds really neat. So a lot of great content if you're looking for more Docker content. So I was wondering if they had anything on those universal base images, so I might go check that out. Okay, and then of course we do have the Ortus, the Adobe stuff. We're going to actually talk about that in the conference section, since the online CF Summit stuff is basically a conference. So there is that coming up your way as well. Okay. Next up, we have some CFcast content, and then we've got lots of those ITB videos coming out. So if you haven't seen them all yet, there's a lot of great content, and we got just a few more days left in the 12 days of Christmas, obviously leading up towards Christmas here. So by the end of it, you'll actually have all the ITB videos available up on the website. And we do have the Software Craftsmanship Book Club, so we got Clean Code Chapter 2, and Chapter 1 is up there as well. And then obviously the ColdBox Master Class, which is free right now, so go take that as well. And then we've got some of our ForgeBox modules and VS Code hint tip and tricks of the week. But I thought I'll let you tell us about the coming soon videos, because it sounds like you've been recording some too.
I have been. We have a bunch of stuff coming soon. We've got more ForgeBox and VS Code snippet videos. Talked about boxifying third-party libraries from you. The ColdBox Elixir videos from Eric. Some getting started with Content Box videos from Daniel. And I spent the last week recording a whole slew of CommandBox screencasts I
Ooh.
I have like a running spreadsheet of screencasts I've wanted to make, and I pulled it up the other day to add some items to it, and I was mortified to see that it had been 2 years since I had last actually like recorded and published a screencast. And I was like, oh, that's just terrible. And I added a whole bunch of new items, so now my list was twice as long. So I finally sat down and recorded probably 10 or 15 screencasts, and I even have a handful more. So those will start trickling out soon onto CFCast as well, and they cover pretty much all the kind of what's new sort of stuff, all the way back to CommandBox 5. So there's
Very
all
cool.
sorts of fun things, and it's incredibly time consuming to go through and set up little demos for every single one of them. And I've already found like 2 bugs while I was doing it, because it's amazing when you sit down and you just like go through and test everything about a feature again to do a demo when you're like, oh man, that doesn't quite work right, does it? So it's been productive in a couple ways, but those should be trickling out somewhat soon.
Cool. Well, looking forward to those. I know you're always knocking out so much stuff. It's kind of crazy. So that's a good way to keep up with it is watching your videos. So I'm looking forward to them myself. Okay, conferences and training. First up, going on right now, and you presented yours just recently, the CF Summit Online. Actually, yeah, you did. Yep. So CF Summit Online, Adobe ColdFusion CF Summit 2022. If you weren't there in Vegas to watch them, or you maybe missed some sessions because there were a lot of sessions going on at once, they're all being streamed online for your convenience. And we got one coming up this week, and like I said, you already presented yours, right? So I think
I did, yeah. My RabbitMQ session I presented online for Adobe.
Yep, so Luis, myself, and Daniel Garcia still have to present ours, but I think Daniel's already got his scheduled for January. I'll probably be in there too. Lots of stuff going on right now, but you want to tell us about this week's session?
Talking about Mark's session, the native mobile apps?
Correct.
Well, it's called Native Mobile Apps with Monaco, IO, and Adobe ColdFusion 2021. So it says, have you always wanted to build native mobile apps? It sounds like an infomercial. Have you always wanted to build native mobile apps, but didn't want to learn Swift or Objective-C? Monaco IO uses the power of Apache Cordova. So yeah, sounds pretty cool. I haven't done anything with mobile apps since I did the blog series on CF Mobile or CF Client, whatever the crap they called it, for that contest they had years ago. It sounds pretty cool. Basic JavaScript knowledge. In this talk, Mark will build an Adobe ColdFusion 21 powered backend using MySQL, exposed as an API, which is consumed by a native mobile app written and built with Monaco.io ecosystem. Sounds pretty fun, and it sounds a lot more smarter than Adobe's previous attempts at CF Client, which is just letting ColdFusion be the backend and using the proper front end. I'm not really familiar with Monaco or Monaco. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Monaco, I think, yeah.
Have you used it?
No, I watched part of his session before we had to clean up at the end of the conference, and it looked like it was basically built on PhoneGap. It's been out since 2015, so
Okay.
I haven't heard of it. I'm kind of surprised that it's been around for 7 years before I heard of it.
Yeah,
So,
the website says cross-platform hybrid mobile app development platform with tools in the crowd. You use HTML hybrid mobile apps. Yeah, development with Apache Cordova. So
yeah, so it's actually like an online thing. So you have the online editor. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if they've done much to update it since, but I'm curious about it for sure. You know, like I said, I've got my favorite horse in the race, but I'm always curious to see what other people are doing and how they're using it and what they could offer. Okay, so next up we have some Vue conference, a Vue.js Nation. So that's going to be happening the 25th and 26th. And so let me see if I can share my screen again. The last time I did this, Adobe site just spun and spun and spun. So we'll see. Aha, this one's working.
well, this isn't Adobe's site.
Yeah. So this is Vue.js Nation conference. It's online, live, 25th and 26th. And you might recognize a couple of these faces here. And so it's powered by VueSchool.io, which is a pretty cool Vue learning software suite. And they've got some pretty big speakers. I actually know quite a few of these, or don't know them, but I know of them. But yeah, so if you guys are looking for some Vue content, starting up right in January, going to be the first conference that we're going to have in the new year. That'll be 25th and 26th, and you can register at vuenation.com. So we got another Vue one coming up right after that. It seems like Vue's getting pretty big, Brad.
It would seem that way, but you also make sure you cover everything that happens in the Vue universe here.
What
There's
shows
also,
up?
there's Vue.js Amsterdam 2023.
Yep. So if anyone's in the Europe area or want to travel, 9th and 10th February 2023, and they've
Creator
got
Vue returns back in person.
yep. And then we got Dev Nexus. So how many times have you been to Dev Nexus before?
I don't know. We've been to all of them for the past 4 or 5 years at least.
Very cool. So I'm still waiting to see which of the Ortus people who submitted topics actually got picked for this year. Do you know when they usually announce that? I'm kind of curious.
I don't know when.
So if one of us is so lucky, April 4th through 6th in Atlanta, and then it looks like a pretty good one. And again, it seems to be one of those ones where they're doing the early bird special still. And I know you said there's just tons and tons of content here, right, at this conference. How many tracks did you say? There's like a bazillion tracks, right?
Usually they have between like 11 and 13 tracks, so like over 10 simultaneous sessions going on. So it's they usually have around like 2,000 attendees and just hundreds of sessions. So it's a pretty busy thing.
I'm looking down to see if they've announced any or if this is last year's list. There's a lot of people here already, if this is this year's.
I'm not entirely sure. These may already be for this year.
Yep. So
Kind of annoying sometimes when you're looking at a conference site and you can't quite tell if they've updated it for the next year or if it still has the previous year's data.
yeah, but you see some of the things here. So frameworks, Jakarta, the platform, practices and other tech. So that's kind of interesting. Observing Minecraft. A lot of security and tools and techniques. Web and front end. So some Vue.js and all different things here. So very cool. Looks like a fun one. Hopefully I can make it out there sometime. Obviously you've been there a few times. So if you guys are looking for some more Vue stuff, we've got Vue.js Live as well, and that one's going to be in London, and that's going to be May 12th and the 15th. So the 12th is live, the 15th is a repeat with some online content there, and they have a couple of different options for you. You can go look at the early bird tickets, but you can also watch 2021's recording, so that's pretty neat. And then next up, not completely last, but I guess a big thing for us, Into the Box 2023, the 10th edition. So you want to give us the details, Brad?
It is slated to happen on May 17th through 19th, so moving back to May in 2023. So that's really only like 6 months from today. So it'll be held in the Woodlands near Houston, Texas. And we're going to have pre-conference hands-on trainings as well, like we normally do on the 17th. We're going to have our live mariachi band and basically back to our spring schedule. So this will be our 10-year anniversary of Into the Box, which is pretty crazy. Because I remember when Luis first said he wanted to do our own conference, and we did it as a kind of like a pre-conference to CF Objective, I think.
Yep.
And I thought, you're crazy, Luis. What are you thinking?
Or when when we took it to Texas, on its own, that was a big step.
Yeah, that was actually much more scary, to be honest. Yeah, when we broke Into the Box out. Though honestly, I think it's one of the best things we did because we unhooked ourselves from the CF Objective train right before it ran off the rails and it never happened again. So actually, really glad we did that.
Because I went to CF Objective, then Dev Objective, and then that's it. So yeah, again, if you are looking to go to the conference, a great way to go to the conference is to actually be a speaker. So call for papers closes at midnight on December 30th. Would love to have you submit your talks today. So fill out the Google form, let us know some of your ideas and what you might want to present. And like I said, we're always looking for new people to present. And, it's nice to see our products and services used in ways we may not have thought of. And I know you get a kick out of it when people do CommandBox sessions so you don't have to, but it also shows up some different ways they're using it that you might not have thought about, or, just explain it in a different way. Like we love to hear Brad talk, but sometimes other people are worth listening to too.
Do you really?
Well, all the people here we didn't tell them that you're going to be on, so maybe we just ambush them with that.
They only showed up because they thought it was going to be you.
Yeah, that's not the case, I'm sure. But so CF Camp is back, June 22 to 23 in June. And that's going to be in the Marriott Hotel Munich Airport in Freising, and the call for speakers is coming in the new year.
That's the same hotel it was at in the previous years, right?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Okay.
So they said it's in Freising. It's not actually at the airport, but it's close-ish to the airport.
I mean, it's like 10, 15 minutes. It's a short little Uber ride.
Cool. So yeah,
I really like Freising. It's a really cute little town. I mean, you can walk 5-10 minutes away, and there's a bunch of restaurants, little, what do you call it, plaza area. I mean, I like Municon as well there at the airport, but Freising is more of a cozy little town feel, in my opinion.
that's cool.
And the hotel has a really nice restaurant just built into it. So.
Yep, that's great when that happens. I really liked the one at Into the Box this year too. The hotel, the restaurant was really nice, and we got to hang out with people after the talk. And so I can imagine if they have a good one there at that hotel, makes it even nicer.
Yeah, I mean, it really is nice when you have a conference in a location where you can go grab a bite to eat at like 11 o'clock at night. A lot of times you find yourself in a place where like there's like just nowhere to go get food or hang out, and so that's definitely makes it a little easier to hang out. And CF Camp always has people, hanging out as well as Into the Box in the evenings talking about stuff.
Yep, very cool. Okay, next up, blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. And so this one here we'll let you start off with, Brad. So we'll talk about Ben Adele's little blog post, and this is a pretty interesting one, because, pagination. It seems like it's a common problem for a lot of people using languages when they get too much data, right?
I didn't actually see this post to Ben's, but it looks like he's just talking about the limit and the offset functionality of MySQL, which is pretty handy. I mean, I've used it a lot before. Basically, limit is kind of like your top keyword in SQL Server, and then offset says, I want to start at this row. So it's basically perfect for pagination when you're, 5 pages in, 10 rows per page.
Yep. And yeah, the interesting thing is I know that in some of the other database, engines, it's not as easy to do this type of thing. And so I know Eric worked really hard with, QB to make that really easy for you. And there's actually a paginate function, which you just give it the page number and the number per page, and it'll do the work for you. But
having done this manually in SQL Server for years with just like temp tables and nonsense, I remember the first time years ago when I saw MySQL's offset and limit stuff, and I was like, what? That's like super easy. Why the heck doesn't SQL Server have crap like this? I don't know, maybe the newer versions do, but
yeah,
this was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, whatever, when I first saw this. And
yeah. So I thought that was a pretty interesting one, because that's something I can't imagine living without these days. And, working an API set up with most JavaScript frameworks, they always send back and forth for each page. But yeah, if you're not doing that and you're just doing local data pagination, just remember, if you got, a lot of records, you're bringing all that data down, and then you're doing all the work on the front end. It's just going to slow down things a lot. So pagination is really cool. And again, limit and offset in MySQL make it really easy. There are ways to do it in other engines, but it's not so easy sometimes. And if you guys are looking at different databases, QB is great for this. I really do like, there's so many cool things that Eric's built in, and it doesn't matter what grammar you're using. You just pick the grammar and it figures out how to do it. So I really get a kick out of that. So highly recommend that one if you guys are looking for pagination, or your database maybe doesn't do it the way you think it should. Next up, so the crumb is Jim Priest. I figured that out today. But he's got one here about counting lines of code with clock. And I never heard of this before. Have you heard of that one, Brad?
Yeah, I think I've heard of it before. I don't remember the last time I ever came across it. I'm a little surprised that he says that it supports ColdFusion. I honestly wasn't aware of any line of code counters that really supported ColdFusion. I mean, like, if you use the test box code coverage with Fusion Reactor, we'll count lines of code in the context of code coverage. But I didn't actually know there were any tools you could just kind of point at a folder. Now, I mean, you can just count the number of lines in a file, but it's one thing to do that. It's another thing to actually say this is white space, this is a comment, this is HTML mixed in with ColdFusion.
That's what I thought was pretty cool, because yeah, I've done the lines of code thing, but again, if you're like Ben Nadell, he loves his spacing in his comments. Doesn't mean you've written that much code, right? I mean, comments are code, but so this is kind of cool that it can break things down like this.
Be interesting to see how well it works.
Yeah. So
like, does it sniff out a CF script tag? Does it sniff out actual CF tags embedded with HTML? Just kind of curious about that.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of cool, and it's something I'd never heard of before, and I might have to play with that, or at least read a little bit more into it, because, yeah, I like the fact that it might actually support ColdFusion. So
I'm almost surprised nobody ever built a command to do that in CommandBox. There's a handful of little utility commands built in the CommandBox, like normalizing into lines and into files and indentations and removing trailing spaces. There's stuff like that built in the CommandBox, but nobody's ever. They were all contributed by some people in the community. No one's ever done anything for trying to count lines of code. But like I said, without kind of custom parsing the code, I don't know how else you would do it. Because the way like the Fusion Reactor powered code coverage and test box works is that it's actually instrumenting the bytecode. And so, based on the internal map in the class file that says these lines of source code actually map to, executable bytecode, that's the only way that we're able to track that. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, of course, he put it in his blog post saying, some managers care about that type of thing. And that made me think, like, I wonder, do you have any experience where people cared about lines of code? Do you have any CI stuff that, counts the lines of code, lines of comments, etc.?
Yeah, I never have. I mean, I think data's cool just because of my personality, but I've never had a boss that was like, Brad, how many lines of code is in our app? I don't know, like, nobody's ever said that to me. I'm sure somewhere maybe somebody has, but it's...
Yeah, and Adam's saying no, just no, and that's what I'm thinking too, but I'm like, there's always somebody, right? So I'm almost like, some people that like, every time you make a commit, compares the lines of code. So wait, you took 2 weeks and you removed 3 lines of code? Like, what the hell? But I
mean, like I said, it's interesting. I love data. I don't know why I would necessarily care outside of. Yeah, I mean, like Adam said, other than just having like a metric that gives you a basic idea of how big a code base is. But I mean, you could tell me how many CFCs you had, and I could have a basic idea of how big the code base was if I was to make some assumptions about the average size of your CFCs.
Well, so if you're talking about clean code, you'd have a good idea, and if you're talking about legacy or normal people's code, you'd have a better idea. What, 3,000 lines per function?
3,000, that's it?
I mean, no, that's per function, so each CFC has 50 functions, so, every CFC is 150,000 lines of code. That sounds about right. But, yeah. Well, you want to give us a quick rundown of the day 8 of the Into the Box Christmas release?
Yeah, so day 8 video from Into the Box had 5 sessions on modern CFML concepts, including one from using Java from your CFML apps, aspect-oriented programming, or AOP, web components, feature flags, and queues in CFML with Rabbit.
Yeah, so 5 pretty cool videos there. We also had a release, or I'm not even sure if it's a release or not, CBWire form validation. So this is something that developers have to deal with all the time, and CBWire is really developing to a pretty cool set of tools. I really like what Grant's doing here, and his example app is really neat. If you want to play with it, go check it out. But this time he's talking about CB validation and how you can use it for powerful form validation. It's kind of neat the way CBWire works. It handles all the back and forward for you. You don't have to write any JavaScript to get this type of validation, and it's surprisingly slim how much you actually need to put into your CFCs to get CBWire to work. So all this here will get this set up. So highly recommend checking this out. I'm going to be working with Grant, hopefully, in the Coding with the QB series, starting in the new year, about building some stuff with CBWire, comparing it to some of the other JavaScript API stuff that we've done recently. So I'm excited to give it a whirl. Okay, so next up, Brad, you want to tell us about Ben's using select or insert into select to duplicate rows.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now for the first time. Somehow I missed all of Ben's blogs this last week.
It's been hard with all that ColdFusion.
Yeah,
noise.
all the ColdFusion stuff filling up Twitter, right?
It has been pretty bad, to be honest.
Yes, he's talking about a syntax insert into select, which I don't know if I'm familiar with, but I'm curious. This is my SQL he's talking about. Is this the same as select into, like you would do in SQL Server?
Possibly. I mean, it's just an insert into, and then you just do a subquery to actually select what you want to put in it. So, you insert into, give the columns, or if you don't give them any columns, it's going to assume all the columns, and then you just do a
so all right. So this isn't quite the same then. This is actually inserted into a real table.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because like what I'm used to doing, though I suppose you can probably do it with a real table. I always do it with temp tables. What I was thinking of in SQL Server is you can create like a temp table on the fly, where you just have a select, and at the bottom you just put into and the name of a table, and it just creates a temp table with all the right columns and dumps the data in it, which saves you the trouble of having to declare the table and then do an insert. Though in this case, he's inserted into an existing table.
Yep. So basically, if there's like a category of items per se, that list item is the list essentially. You can just insert it again, give it a primary key. It just duplicates all the values. So maybe there's like a template of stuff that each record or set of records must have. It just allows you to kind of insert them all, and it'll just create the primary key for you automatically, and then all the other fields are duplicate. So.
Wait. What's automatically creating the primary key though?
Well, it's probably if you look up here at the database, it's unsigned order increment integer ID. So when you insert it, and if you don't include that column, the database will just create it, right? So if you're inserting...
I guess I'm misunderstanding the example. I assumed that he was still explicitly creating his to-do item table, and then all he was doing was just inserted into it.
He is. So he's reading from the same to-do item for a same list. And so he's basically... inserting a copy of all the items for a particular list. So, and like I said,
okay.
I can think of this
I
as
guess this is a lot less interesting than I thought. I mean, this just looks like just a normal everyday insert where you have a select, which I mean...
Yeah, it's just a duplication method, It's an easy way to copy in. So...
Okay, I guess. I mean, yeah, because you can say, in SQL, you can say insert into table columns, and then you can have below it any select you want. I mean, you could select out static values if you wanted to, or you can have a select from a table.
Yeah, and that's where I've done more of the okay, I want all these, but I'm going to reset these values type thing. But
yeah, I mean, I guess like Scott said, this is something that I've used in SQL for like a long time. I thought he was doing something a bit more clever with it. I mean, not that it's not cool, it's just this to me is just a regular everyday. This is an insert. Yep, it's an insert. I mean, the thing he's doing with it is sort of ancillary. I mean, irrespective of what table you're selecting from or into, the basic concept that you can insert into a table and you can have a select that powers that insert is just kind of like a thing SQL does. So yeah, that's a thing I guess that SQL does.
Yeah. Well, his next one's a little more interesting.
Adam wants to know if I've done it with tag islands. I don't know. It's possible.
So the next one is breaking up an IPv4 range into CIDRs. This sounds like something that James Moberg's probably done before, but using Lucy to break it up. And it all started because he got a malicious actor in Australia hitting his blog, and he was talking about Cloudflare's WAF.
Sending a lazy eye to everyone around here from Australia.
Mm-hmm. But I thought it was kind of interesting that he used the WAF rules, and he basically said he learned about how IPs work because it wasn't the way he thought it was, and so he explored that here. And I've done stuff with masks and everything, but I always use a tool.
Yeah, I've always been a little confused by the CIDR ranges. I mean, I understand what they do basically, but if you showed me one and you were like, which IP addresses does this affect? They were like, geez, I don't know. Go to one of the 80 websites out there where you paste it in and it shows you, because I always get confused on just exactly how it works, even though I get the concept. So this is, I've never done it with ColdFusion. Like you said, I've always just used a tool online.
Yep. And so it was interesting to walk through the steps here. And again, I'm probably going to have to read it a couple more times because I always got confused with this stuff as well. But it is pretty common. Again, I just use a task, like a online tool to do it. But so his steps up from 0.3 to 0.72, breaking the range into tight CIDR ranges. So 32 contains just that. The 0.430 contains those next four. The 0.8. See I'm curious how this works because It's still gibberish to me. So I'm going to have to do some reading here.
Yeah, at Ortus we use Cloudflare for our DNS as a proxy, and it has some really nice, easy rules. You can give it a range of IP addresses you want to block. You just have to be careful though, because we've totally blocked like kind of wide ranges in the past, only to find, like a year later, some poor soul over in like the UK who can't use ForgeBox, and we finally figure out his IP address and look, and it was in some broad range of IPs that Luis blocked like a year and a half earlier because one IP had spam, and so he just blocked the whole subset, which included a whole bunch of like legitimate users. So,
yeah. And that's what I thought too. Like most WAFs have the provider, they have the starting ending IPs, and I thought Cloudflare did too. But that's who Ben was using, so maybe the CIDR is the more simple tool. But if you change it, you could probably get to another option. But yeah.
I'm not saying that Cloudflare didn't allow us to block more specifically. I'm saying that we were just kind of lazily like, all right, we're blocking everybody in that entire range.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, that's why David Ballinger doesn't get our emails, because the service we use just decided that he's in an unsafe place, or maybe his provider thinks that we're unsafe. I don't know.
Well, if you're from like Russia or like a couple other countries, I think we just outright block all access to ForgeBox, which I don't particularly care for, even though there's a lot of like hacking stuff that comes from there. Because Cloudflare has features where you can just choose an entire country, and it just straight up blocks those countries. But I've actually looked on our Cloudflare rules, and I've seen requests coming from Russian IPs that look like totally legitimate, like requests to just install like Lucy from ForgeBox, and I'm like, ew, I feel kind of bad. There's probably like some dude in Russia apparently legitimately trying to use CommandBox. I don't know, but he can't because we just blocked the whole country outright. But anyway,
Zoom tries to automatically block a lot of countries, but I think it blocks way too much by default. I mean,
that's sort of a separate conversation, which is, how do you decide how broadly to block? Because the security people are always like, block everyone! It's the most secure. Which is great until you have people that are like, hey, I can't use your service, you suck.
Yeah, exactly. And most people don't spend the time to chase you down to let you know, especially if they can't look up your information because you're blocking that too. So
yeah, I'd fill out your form if I could access your website, you jerks.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, this is pretty cool though. I actually like this little tool because, like I said, I've never seen anything implemented in ColdFusion that did this.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's interesting. I don't like not understanding some stuff, even if it's just top level, So I'll have to look through it and try to understand it a little more. But cool. And then we had another into the box 12 Days of Christmas. So day 7, we had some interesting things. So we had CBWire, Vue.js, and Alpine.js. And then what did we have on day 6, Brad?
On day 6, we had ContentBox, it looks like. 3 sessions related to ContentBox, getting started with ContentBox 101, and headless CMS, and then deploying to the cloud.
Cool. And then up after that, we had the Working Code podcast. So episode 105, I haven't listened to this one yet, and they called it No Effort December. So like no shave, no November. They got No Effort December. That's time of the year where they gather around the mics and talk about whatever the heck comes to mind. So they've done 2 years on the podcast now, and the holidays. So sounds interesting. But yeah, she's talking about, like Carol's talking about maybe using hackathons to improve community outreach, and so it sounds like a good one. I'll have to catch that one up. I've actually had a couple of weeks where I haven't listened to too many podcasts, so I've got to play the catch-up game. But if you guys are interested, they do talk about non-CFML stuff. It's more just code in general and working and different stuff, but they do touch on it as well. And then we have one more day of Into the Box videos from 12 Days of Christmas, and that's your favorite stuff, right, Brad? CommandBox?
It is. It looks like it's basically 2 of my sessions and then Abram Adams' session. So.
And I was stuck in the other room, so I need to watch those ones.
Well, I don't know, you probably know most of them, but yeah, so I had a CommandBox Hidden Gems, or Hidden Gems, as Gert would say, as well as the top modules. So basically just a bunch of cool CommandBox features that I assume everybody knows, but sometimes people talk about them and a bunch of people are like, oh, wow, we didn't know about that. So covered that one. Also, securing and tuning CommandBox servers for production which actually we get quite a few questions about that. And CommandBox is now it's secure by default as we can make it, and has all sorts of security profiles and things that are kind of like easy button security. And then, of course, Abram Adams had an entire session on writing command line utilities with CommandBox, which I thought was a really cool session.
Yep, very, very cool. Okay, so next up, let's talk about jobs. So CFML jobs, you can get CFML jobs on getcfmljobs.com, and they're listing 37 ColdFusion positions, I think, in the last 5 months. So a lot of cool stuff there. You want to tell us about the 2 new opportunities they've got? I think they're both at the same company. I'm not sure if they're separate roles or not, though.
Are these the ones that we talked about?
No, actually, this is for different companies.
Both of these say full-time ColdFusion developer at remote United Kingdom.
Yep, the Marcus Donald People is the company.
Is it the same posting twice?
It looks a little different. It might be one of those ones where it scraped from Indeed and they posted actually on here.
Marcus Donald People. ColdFusion 11, Update 19 is the current production environment. That takes a big man to admit that. 5+ years CF experience, good understanding of front-end language. I certainly hope that the goal is to be upgrading that. If I was applying for a job, I would have some tough questions for just how quickly they were looking at. They're desiring someone with Lucy 5.3 experience, so maybe that's the direction they're moving in.
Very cool.
Migrating their ColdFusion 11 to Lucy 3. I'm just guessing. Guessing there. And this other one says fully remote, no office requirement. Wow, there you go.
Yep. So, like I said, they may be similar positions. Sometimes it grabs them differently.
This also lists Lucy experience as desirables. They're also looking for someone knowledgeable in cold space fusion. So if you're a physicist into low energy nuclear reactions, you've been following that science news, I think they're looking for you. Oh, wait, no, never mind. Their HR person just doesn't know how to spell ColdFusion. My bad.
But we also do have those Patreon-sponsored job announcements from tomorrow's guide. So as we mentioned before, they're a fast-paced leader in the UK sector, catering for care seekers across 3 areas: care homes, nurseries, and home care. They have a pretty decent product team, 20 individuals across the UK working remotely to expand and improve their offering, and they're trying to build up and expand their team year on year. They work with ColdFusion 2021, Node.js, and React in the Azure cloud, and they use MS SQL and MongoDB currently. So they're looking for a couple of positions, a senior ColdFusion developer and automation testers, and they have some pretty cool bonuses, which we'll tell you in a minute. But you want to tell us about those roles a little bit?
So these are the 2 that we mentioned at the beginning. They have a senior ColdFusion developer, and they have an automation test engineer role. Both of these are UK only and permanent remote positions. So in both cases, they're looking for a minimum of 3 years experience in ColdFusion or automated testing, respectively. And then for the ColdFusion position, they'd like you to know about database design, normalization, SQL Server, and familiarity with Git.
Yep.
For the testing role, they would like you to be experienced with automated testing tools such as Selenium and API testing tools such as Postman.
Yep, and Fiddler too, which I'd never heard of before. I've heard of a couple other ones.
Oh yeah, Fiddler. I used to use Fiddler all the time, and I never hear about it anymore. To be honest, I used Fiddler back before browsers had like really good just built-in debuggers, and it just acted as a basic HTTP proxy for the most part, and it would show you your request and the response, and you could drill down. It worked pretty good. It's Fiddler stuck on the roof, as David said. It was pretty handy when HTTPS started to become more popular. Fiddler became much less useful because unless you set it up as a middleman thing, in, decrypting SSL certs, it wasn't able to do anything with HTTPS traffic.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I used to use Fiddler all the time, but I haven't touched it in years. I didn't know it was still really out there.
Yep. Anyway, back to the job. So benefits of both roles: they have the 4,000 per annum discretionary company bonus scheme. They got the 25 days annual leave plus bank holidays, 6% employer pension contribution, access to free perks through PerkBox, which is not one of our tools, just so you know.
Yeah, that sounds like that should be Ortus tool.
Yep, and they got long service awards. They got a cycling to work scheme for when you do go into the office, and they have company and team nights out, which is pretty cool. So that sounds like a pretty good place to work. And thanks again for sponsoring as a Patreon, and hopefully we can help you find the right people. And there are other job links as well. You can obviously get on the Slack channel, the CFML Slack channel, and the Box Slack team now have job channels, but there's also Order Solutions. We're always looking. So on about-us/careers, you can go apply for a U.S. position. And I know that Luis is going to be, doing more in the Europe area. I know they're already doing conferences and sponsoring, and in El Salvador, everything is going really great, including the ITB Latam. So you were there. What do you think of it? Was it a good turnout this year?
Yeah, ITB Latam was awesome. I got sick the night after the conference and felt kind of miserable the rest of the time I was in El Salvador. So I don't know what it is about El Salvador. It has my number though. It kicks me in the butt both times I've been there. But yeah, it was fantastic down there. The weather was great. We were at capacity. We had to turn off registrations. Had a ton of students who came. Of course, we had a really great competitive ticket price for students there. Had people that came on a bus from 2 hours away to the conference, and it was standing room only in the keynote and a bunch of the sessions. So we basically did side-by-side workshops and sessions. So in one room we had a session going on, in another room we had these like kind of 2-hour hands-on workshops. Not a lot of people bring laptops to conferences there in El Salvador, so the workshops were kind of hit and miss, but people were still in there, like taking notes on paper and stuff. But it was fantastic. I kind of just set my own little bubble listening to Spanish all day long that I really barely understood. But I did my presentation in English, and they laughed at my jokes, so they were picking up enough of what I was saying. And it was a really a great conference down there in San Salvador.
Very cool.
We had like 140 people or something.
Dang, that is a big number. That's good. So it's growing every year.
We were in like a Hyatt Regency hotel or something. Anyway, it was like a really nice hotel. They did all the catering and all the music and everything. So
very cool. Okay, so next up we have ForgeBox Module of the Week. And this week we're going to be talking about a new one that just popped up on ForgeBox, and maybe pretty simple one, but sometimes the simple ones are the good ones. And so this one I thought was cool because you can actually use it from curl, and it didn't seem like you needed to get sign up for a license to use it like a lot of the other APIs out there. But this is IPIFI. So the IPIFI API module.
I thought it was IPify.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm just like making it up. So IPIFI or IPIFI. Or
no, I think it's IPify.
Yeah, so
if Luis created this, I'm guessing that's what he intended.
Well, that's actually the domain name, so that's why he's probably named it that.
Is.
But yes, but this module allows you to tap into the IPify API, so ipify.org. It's a simple public IP address API to get the address where you made the call from. So a lot of times if you're running on a cloud and you've got all these different servers, you're popping up on different nodes, you have different IPs. This allows you just to basically get your external IP, your public IP address, so that way you could use it in either configuration or whatnot you need. And it's kind of cool. If you do go to the website, they give you a little curl script that you can run, and it's pretty easy. So yeah, I mean, it's.
Do they give you any geolocation data, or is it just your IP address?
They may have more in it. To be honest, I didn't look too much detail into it.
I'll look up like my public IP address if you just type "what's my IP" into Google. Google will just tell you at the top.
Oh yeah, I mean I use IP Chicken because it's really easy to remember.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever like needed to get it from a programmatic standpoint.
Yeah, and like I said,
I was like, why didn't I think of building this API? It would literally just be a ColdFusion page that's returns CGI.remote address or whatever.
So they do have an IP geolocation API, which is probably where they make their costs, you see. So there's cost per credit on this one. So the other one's a gateway drug to get you in there.
Yeah, so that makes sense that geolocation is a paid feature that they offer.
Yep. So, but for those who want to check it out, like I said, simple, but it works, right? And sometimes you need that. And like I said, with the whole Docker stuff now, you may need it more because you're not sure what host you're on or whatnot.
I'll tell you what Docker host you're on. It's AB213947Y, obviously.
Maybe.
Anyone who has used Docker Swarm, you know what that pain is when your host names are all randomly generated characters that mean nothing.
Yep. But there's a module for that too that I built. So you spit it out in your header so you know which one's spitting back the files to you. So
love it.
Okay, so VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. This is actually like a combination one, and it sounds like it's pretty new to your scope, but I'll
It's
let you talk about it.
a 1-2. Yeah, I literally heard about this like this morning on Slack. People were talking about it, and I was like, "What is this? I've never heard of it." And they're like, "Yeah, it's like kind of like brand new." So, Software Cobbler, aka David Rogers. Is that
David
what I said?
Rogers,
Yeah.
yep.
He's made a bunch of kind of cool stuff, and he has a project that he's been using or working on called Lucy Debug, which is basically a step debugger, from my understanding, for Lucy. I haven't even had a chance to play with it. We were talking about it. Somebody pinged me in Slack asking about.
I think it was Jamie Jackson that pinged you, right?
Actually, I think it was Zach Spitzer who pinged me. But Jamie was part of the conversation and said that he's been using it a ton. He just showed it to his whole team, and they've already got everybody set up with it. But basically, it has two parts, from my understanding, reading through the docs this morning. There's a Java agent that you add with a JVM arg, kind of like you add like Fusion Reactor as a JVM arg. And we were talking about how it'd be pretty easy to build a CommandBox module to do that. And then there's a VS Code extension then that you install that connects to it, and basically, can start up a debugger to be able to kind of step debug your code. It's Lucy specific as far as I know, but sounds like a pretty cool project. I know that there's never really been a lot of options when it comes to step debugging in ColdFusion. There's been the Fusion debug library, which was kind of a general purpose debugger that the Fusion Reactor guys worked on, but that library's kind of been left alone. And then there's the production debugger, or whatever they call it, that's now built into some of the versions of Fusion Reactor, but that is a web-based debugger where you have to, go to their web-based UI. It's not like a general purpose debugger you can use in VS Code. So this claims to be just more of a general purpose debugger you're using right there in VS Code. Doesn't require any special web-based access. So
yeah, it's very cool.
Sounds like it's pretty cool. From what I've heard, it does not work alongside Fusion Reactor.
Java agent can, you only have one, or do you just set them up differently?
Jamie linked to a message in Slack where David Rogers was explaining his first take on why it didn't work, and there's some debugging things inside the JVM that I guess only one library can use at a time.
Oh.
And so when they both try to use it, the last one to try fails. So anyway, that's just something to keep in mind. Looks like you'd have to probably turn off Fusion Reactor to use it. But if you're not using Fusion Reactor, and you wouldn't really care. Either way, it seems like a pretty darn cool community project for some people to help get behind. Because that's a pretty sweet feature that, to be honest, the Lucy core team would probably never have the time to work on. So
yeah. No, I mean, it's really cool. Like I said, I've talked to David before about a few different things, and he's doing some really cool stuff. Trying to build some extra tools around ColdFusion. It's hard because ColdFusion's so dynamic. A lot of things make it difficult, but he's got some really cool ideas, and so really cool to see it. And hopefully, some more people can maybe sort of pitch in and help a little bit and try and get it to a point where maybe it has a ForgeBox extension, like a module to install to make it easy to run and set up. And I think a lot more people would give it a whirl in. So, but if you want to have a look at it, the links are there in the show notes. And yeah, so check it out, and good stuff. Okay, so last but not least, let's thank all of our Patreon supporters. So these individuals, personally supporting us on our open source initiatives. We couldn't do it without them, and they're supporting the tools that we build, like CommandBox and ForgeBox and ColdBox and TestBox and lots of other boxes, not PerkBox or Box.com, but a lot of boxes out there, and basically they're helping to support our cloud infrastructure, which powers ForgeBox, so we can do cool package management things with CommandBox. And they can support us if you guys want to join the list. I know a lot of people in the chat are already on our Patreon list, and we thank you. But there's other people can go to patreon.com/ordersolutions. And again, end of the year, some businesses, trying to write off their expenses. So if you pay now, you can save 10% in the year as a Patreon. So that's a good option. And what are some of the perks that they get from being Patreon supporters?
Are you asking me?
Yes, just you.
If you are a bronze Patreon supporter and up, you get a ForgeBox Pro and a CFCast subscription as a perk. All Patreon supporters have a profile badge in the community website, lets everyone know how cool you are. All Patreon supporters also have their own private forum access on our community website. You can have insider conversations with us. And all Patreon supporters also have their own private channel access in the Box Team Slack. And then you also get live stream access to streams like Coding with the Kiwi and Friends and the Ortus Software Craftsmanship Book Club.
Yep. So we try to give our patrons a little extra perks. Obviously, we're really appreciative of them, and we couldn't do a lot of the work we're doing without them. So again, if you want to find out more and just get involved in the community.ortussolutions.com is a great place to go if you're not already on our Box Team Slack as well. So we got lots of Patreons. The last couple times we're going to be reading everyone's name because they're getting too many, but we're going to break it up. So I'm going to do the first few, Brad, and then I'll let you finish it off. So we want to thank all our Patreons. So thank you, John Wilson from Synaptrix, Tomorrow's Guides, Jordan Clark, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Dan Card, Jeffrey McGee from Sunstar Media, Dean Maunder, Nolan Irk, Vil de Bruin, and Abdul Rahim. You want to give us the rest?
Also, Don Bellamy, Joseph Lamory, Jonathan Pritt, Jan Yannick, Laxma Tiradati, Brian, getting it, I always want to say his name wrong, Gidanelli, jeez, from Haggerty Motorsports, I think I get it right after all these years, Earl Von Stetten, Jeremy Adams, Didier Lisnicki, Matthew Clemente, Scott Steinbeck from Agri Tracking Systems, Daniel Garcia, Ben Nadell, Richard Herbert, Brett DeLine, Kai Koenig, Shirley Earhart, Jason Diger, Sean Oden, Ross Phillips, Matthew Darby, Edgardo Cabezas, Patrick Flynn, Stephanie Monge, Kevin Wright, John Wish, Peter Amiri, Kevin Vanis, John Nessem, and Tia.
Yep.
What an amazing list of, oh wait, what's the adjective? Of
substantial.
Substantial. What a list of substantial supporters.
Yep, they're definitely doing a lot of great work. So thanks, everybody. Hope everyone has a good Christmas or holiday period, whatever you're celebrating. All the best to you and your family. And we'll have one more episode, I think, next week. So check us out for the pre-New Year's, and then we'll tell you what we might be seeing coming up in 2023. But thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Thanks, Brad, for joining me.
See you guys.
Have a good one. Bye, everybody. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernize.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.